Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Abandoned Puppet Theater. Holly Arnold stood at the edge of the crumbling theater, staring up at the faded marquee that read Marionette Theater of Dreams. The salt air from the nearby coast of the Isle of Wight made the building's wooden frame groan, as if the theater itself were protesting their presence. Behind her, the rest of the group gathered: Charlie, an eager photographer, Liv the skeptic, and Sam, a history buff who had heard the rumors about the place. "I can't believe this place is still standing," Sam said. It was abandoned in the 1950s, right after that accident." "What accident?" "One of the puppeteers died during a show. They say his marionette strings wrapped around his throat. Some freak incident. The theater closed the next day, and no one's set foot in here since. They were here to explore the forgotten history of the Isle, to photograph relics of the past, and the puppet theater had been their ultimate goal since planning the trip." "Well, we're about to set foot inside now," she said. The front doors hung askew on their hinges, and they had to squeeze through the gap to enter the dim interior. The lobby was thick with dust and the smell of rot. A velvet carpet, now threadbare and moth-eaten, stretched out before them, leading to the grand double doors of the auditorium. The stained glass windows on either side of the lobby cast faint, ghostly light through the grime. "A creepy," Liv muttered. Each advertised old puppet shows, featuring marionettes with wide, glassy eyes and wooden limbs frozen in cheerful poses. Sam stepped forward and pushed the auditorium doors open with a low groan. The vast space within had fared even worse than the lobby. Rows of rotting chairs sloped down toward a stage draped in tattered red curtains. High above, an elaborate rigging system for the marionette still hung from the ceiling, its rope swaying gently in the draft. "This is incredible," Charlie whispered. "It's like time just stopped here." Holly's eyes were drawn to the stage, to the figures still standing there, marionettes ranged in strange positions. Their painted on expressions seemed too vivid, almost watching. "We should go up there," Sam said. Holly hesitated, feeling a knot of unease tighten in her stomach, but the others followed, and she didn't want to be left behind. When they reached the stage, Holly found herself face to face with the marionettes. They were disturbingly lifelike up close, their wooden eyes gleaming unnaturally in the low light. Some were dressed in old-fashioned, ornate costumes, their joints delicately carved, while others were garishly painted, their faces twisted into exaggerated grins. "Ah." Holly trailed off, reaching out to touch one's hand. The wood was cold, and she pulled back quickly, a chill running through her. "They used to perform famous plays here with marionettes," Sam said. "People said the puppeteers were so good, it felt like the dolls had minds of their own." "That's probably just an exaggeration," a sudden clang echoed through the space. Holly turned, her heart racing, but it was only Charlie, who had knocked over an old prop stand while trying to get the perfect shot. "Sorry." But as Holly's pulse settled, she realized something had changed. The puppets, were they standing differently? One seemed to have turned its head ever so slightly toward her, its blank eyes now fixed on hers. "You guys did these puppets move?" Liv rolled her eyes. "You're just spooking yourself. They're old. They probably shifted because of the vibrations." But before she could say anything else, the room grew colder. A breeze passed through, though the doors were all closed, and the ropes above the stage began to sway more violently. The lights, dim as they were, flickered, then died completely, plunging the theater into darkness. "Okay, not funny," Liv said. But Holly couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced up at the rigging, and in the faint light from Liv's phone, she saw them. The marionettes. They were hanging from the ropes now, their limbs twisted unnaturally, as though something invisible had yanked them upward. One puppet, a gaudily dressed clown, twitched in the air, its eyes glinting with malice. "Hey guys." Holly's voice cracked, her eyes darting around the dark room. Sam hissed. "Look," he pointed to the center of the stage where a new figure stood. It was larger than the others, its face that of an old man, with sunken eyes and a grotesque sneer. It wore the clothes of a puppeteer, its strings leading up into the darkness of the rafters. But no one was holding them. The puppet raised its arm, jerkily, as if pulled by unseen hands. "Ugh!" Holly screamed. The group bolted for the doors, but the theater seemed to close in around them. The aisle stretched impossibly long, and no matter how fast they ran, the exit remained out of reach. Holly's breath came in ragged gasps as she looked over her shoulder. The puppets were moving, lurching off the stage and stumbling toward them, their wooden limbs cracking and twisting as they walked. Liv screamed as one puppet, a ballerina with a broken leg, reached out and grasped her ankle, pulling her to the floor. Holly grabbed Liv's arm, pulling with all her strength, but the puppet's grip was inhumanly strong. More marionettes joined, their faces contorted into twisted smiles as they dragged Liv into the shadows. "Ugh!" Holly cried, but Charlie pulled her back, his face pale with terror. "We have to keep moving," he shouted. They stumbled through the endless aisle, dodging puppets that seemed to emerge from the walls themselves. Their hollow, wooden footsteps echoed ominously as they closed in, their eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Finally, Holly saw a faint glimmer of moonlight through the door. With one last burst of adrenaline, she and Charlie pushed through, collapsing onto the cracked pavement outside. The cold night air stung her lungs as she gasped for breath, and for a moment the world was still. Sam stumbled out behind them, blood on his shirt, his eyes wide with shock. Charlie panted. Holly's heart sank. She didn't make it. The theater loomed behind them, its facade as lifeless as ever, but inside, Holly knew the marionettes were waiting for the next visitors, the next souls to stumble into their cursed domain. "Let's get out of here," Sam whispered. They turned and fled into the night, the haunting laughter of the puppets echoing in their ears. But as Holly glanced back one last time, she saw a figure in the doorway, a puppet, dressed in Liv's clothes, its glassy eyes watching them go. They would never escape the marionette theater of dreams. Not really. The puppets had already claimed them. Holly, Charlie, and Sam ran through the twisted streets of the Isle of Wight, their breath ragged, the night air biting at their exposed skin. The shadow of the puppet theater loomed behind them like a dark spectre, but Holly couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't truly left. The memory of Liv, her twisted form among the marionettes, burned in her mind, along with the sickening image of those lifeless, glassy eyes reflecting back at her. They finally slowed down near an old stone wall, panting and gasping for air. Holly doubled over, her legs trembling beneath her, while Sam leaned against the wall, his hand shaking uncontrollably. "I don't know what that was," Sam muttered. "But those things, they weren't normal, no kidding." His face was pale, and his voice cracked with panic. "Are those puppets, they're alive, or something close to it. We need to get out of here, get off the island." Now Holly wiped the sweat from her brow. The ferry back to the mainland wouldn't arrive until morning, and they were trapped on the Isle of Wight until then. She felt a chill deep in her bones, a creeping sensation that no matter how far they ran, the marionettes would find them. "If there's no way they'll stop," Holly whispered. "They're connected to that theater, to whatever happened in there." Sam looked at her. "What do you mean? It's just a building. Creepy, yeah, but we're out. They can't follow us, right?" But she'd seen something in the puppet's eyes, something that hinted at an intelligence far beyond the realm of human understanding. They weren't just props possessed by some spirit or lingering curse, they were something worse, something that wanted to spread. "There's something wrong with this island. It's like the theater's power is seeping out. We're not safe anywhere." As she spoke, the wind picked up. The distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks echoed through the night, but there was something else beneath it, a soft, rhythmic tapping, like the sound of wooden feet shuffling over stone. Charlie stiffened. "Do you hear that?" Sam's head jerked up. The tapping grew louder, closer, as though something was approaching, moving through the dark streets. Holly's breath hitched in her throat, and she turned, eyes wide, to face the direction of the sound. Out of the mist, a figure emerged, small, jerking forward with every step. It was a puppet, its joints creaking and clicking with each unnatural movement. His carved face was frozen in a grotesque smile, its eyes gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Behind it, more shapes began to form, moving toward them with slow, deliberate steps. "No, no, no, no," Sam stammered. Charlie grabbed Holly's arm. "We need to go. Now." They bolted. The puppets followed relentlessly, their hollow footsteps growing faster, more frantic. Holly's mind raced as they dashed through the darkened alleys. If the theater's curse had somehow followed them, they couldn't just outrun it. There had to be a way to stop it, to sever the connection between the marionettes and their master. A thought struck her Sam's story about the puppeteer. He had died during a performance, his strings tightening around his throat. What if it wasn't an accident? What if the puppeteer had been cursed, bound to the theater and its creations even after death? We need to go back, Holly gasped. Charlie's eyes were wild with panic. What, are you insane? There's something we missed. I think the puppeteer, his spirit or whatever's controlling them, it's tied to the theater. If we don't end it there, they'll keep hunting us. And how do we stop something like that? I don't know yet. But we have to try against their instincts. The closer they got, the louder the sound of the marionette's footsteps became, as though the island itself was alive with their presence. Holly's heart pounded in her chest, her fear threatening to overwhelm her. When they reached the theater, it looked even more menacing than before. The old marquee, illuminated by the dim light of the moon, seemed to glow with a malevolent energy. Holly hesitated for only a moment before pushing the doors open once more. Inside, the air was colder, thicker with the presence of something ancient and powerful. The stage lay in the same state of decay, but the marionettes were no longer there. They were outside, chasing them through the night. We need to find the puppeteer's body, Holly said. Maybe there's something here that will help us break the connection. They split up. Holly's mind raced through possibilities: an old journal, a ritual, anything that could explain the dark magic that controlled the puppets. She tore through drawers and overturned dusty shelves, her hands shaking. Then, in the far corner of the dressing room, she found it. A small, ornate box covered in layers of grime. Inside was a tangle of marionette strings coiled tightly around something, a small, carved wooden heart. Holly shouted, calling Charlie and Sam over. I think I found it. What is it? Holly held up the heart. It's the puppeteer's heart, his real one, maybe. This is how he's still controlling them. Charlie swallowed hard. What do we do with it? Holly took a deep breath. We destroy it without hesitation. The wooden heart splintered, and a wail filled the air, so loud and piercing that it rattled the walls of the theater. The strings inside the box writhed, then fell limp. The footsteps outside stopped abruptly. The theater fell silent, as if the island itself had exhaled. Holly stood, her heart pounding in her chest. The spell had been broken. The marionettes were no longer puppets of the dead. They were just lifeless dolls scattered in the streets outside. But as the silence stretched on, Holly couldn't help but feel that something still lingered in the shadows of the abandoned puppet theater, waiting to be unleashed once more. Some stories never truly end. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.